The Armstrong Spallumcheen Chamber of Commerce presents the Township of Spallumcheen All Candidates Forum. I'm your moderator for the evening. I'm Gerry Popoff. I'd like to also introduce our candidates. We have, maybe you could just kind of wave to the audience, and they've named tags in front as well. We've got John Bakker, Andrew Casson, Carolyn Farris, LeMaire, Gerry Popoff, John Tienhoven, and Todd York. We have Margaret Oudston doing our timekeeper. We also have Bev Peacock, Sound and Lightning. We also have Mike Bakker at Rhythm Productions helping us out tonight. We have some rules of conduction we need to go through. Questions must be asked at the microphone at the front here. Questions must be stated in 1 minute. One question may be asked at a time. Please identify yourself prior to speaking. If you wish to ask any other questions, please return to the end of the line. Now we'll have the candidates do their... Oh, yes, sorry, we have to explain. We've got a green card, which is the caution, the yellow card. We don't have the yellow. And then we have the red that tells you to stop. Okay, so our first speaker is Todd York, our latecomer.
I've never been first at anything with the last name starting with Y. There's means cahoots here. Tell me when, Mark.
Oh, right.
I know. Okay.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
All right. First of all, thank you everybody for coming out. Pleasure to take time out of your day to come and see what we're doing, and thank you to the CFC for hosting this. It's always a pleasure. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Todd York. My family moved here back in the 80s, and I've lived in the Wildfire area with my wife and daughter and granddaughter now for the last 25 years. I'm the longest term councilor in the room, I think 16, 17 years. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm the oldest, Gerry, but I am the longest term councilor in here. I guess we have to ask ourselves, what makes a good councilor? This is what you're here to listen to. And I'm going to give you a few ideas of things that I've picked up. An open mind. You can't be a single issue person. A common sense view of short and long-term issues. And the ability to, as a group, pull together to achieve those goals. I mean, ultimately, I've learned that this position is about communication and it's about relationship building with our neighboring communities and with senior governments for sure. We continually deal with ministries and government agencies to effect change to legislation because often legislation can be detrimental to communities such as ours. It's a tough road sometimes with them, but continuity and trust of other politicians and local groups seems to go a long, long way. Of course, a big part of our time is spent with dealing with applicants by local families. I wholeheartedly believe that assisting these families through the gauntlet of regulatory business facing them is one of our primary responsibilities. It's hard out there. You don't need local government to be another roadblock between you and your efforts to try and better your life. We're also tasked with long-term planning, priorities. The seeds of financial stability have to be cared for so we don't suffer unwanted massive fluctuations and taxation increases. How do we do this? Operational efficiencies, of course, sustainable growth, which you hear quite a bit of. And that gives me 2 minutes at the end because I wrote too much. Thank you very much. Wow, that's fast.
Thank you, Mr. York. We'll have John Bakker do his speech, please.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks all for coming out. My name is John Bakker. Together with my wife, Heather, we have a business here in Spallumcheen for the last 21 years. This is my first term at council. 4 years has been interesting with COVID and everything else, but yeah, I really enjoy it, so I'm hoping I can do it for another 4, and yeah, working with everybody in Spallumcheen and Armstrong is also important. So yeah, I'm hoping I can do it for another 4 years. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bakker. We have Carolyn Farris next, please.
Thanks for coming out. And I want to thank you all for supporting the democratic process. My name is Carolyn Farris, and I'm asking for your support on the Spallumcheen Council for the next 4 years. I strongly believe that democracy only works when there is a choice for the voters, and it is never as important as in our local elections that can have such a great impact on our living, working, and playing in the great Township of Spallumcheen that was known as the place where farming came first. I am deeply concerned about the densification of our area in view of the climate change effects on reducing and changing rain and snow patterns, and that these will have a detrimental effect on water availability and aquifer recharge. As well, it seems that the principles of smart growth to preserve farmland and concentrate population in urban areas is being forgotten, and this is leading to an increasing need for road maintenance as traffic levels increase. A little about myself. I came to the farm I currently live on in 1970 with my parents, Bill and Marion Farris, and 3 siblings. We raised pigs, poultry, and horses for 20 years, and I changed that into sheep farming when I moved home after 20 years in the Canadian Armed Forces. And my niece is now the 3rd generation farmer on the property. Like many small lot farmers, I also worked as a teacher in School District 83 for 20 years before semi-retiring. And currently I volunteer with a number of local organizations, including the Bargain Bin, where I'm privileged to serve as president. And I previously served on council, so I have a good idea of what I'm getting into.
Thank you, Carolyn. We have Joe Van Tienhoven.
Okay, I just learned how to spell. Thank you everybody for coming out. Appreciate everybody coming here to really hear from us as my colleagues here and everybody here. It is uncomfortable being on the hot seat, but I think we're all passionate about our community. And I've been in this community since 1990. Started out as a visitor and helping out the Kin Club as a volunteer before we moved here. That led to me, once I moved here, joining the fire department, being on the fire department for 20 years, which then transitioned into council. So right from the first time we came to this community, we loved it, and it's been a real privilege to help be on council and help shape this community. So other than that, I'm not much of a speech giver, so we'll just wait for the questions, but thank you all for coming and listening to us.
Thank you, Joe. We have Gerry Popoff, please.
Thank you everyone for coming. I know a lot of people in this community. For the people who don't know me, I am Gerry Popoff. I have lived here in Spallumcheen for 35 plus years. With my family here. I'm a 4th generation farm boy. I'm a licensed mechanic. I ran a home-based auto repair business and I ran a cow calf operation, both here in BC and Alberta for 4 years. I'm on present council, completing my first term. I have attended just about every council meeting since 2002, previous to being on council. I enjoy helping people in our community. We have a good working team now of our mayor and present council. We have accomplished a lot in the last 4 years. I would like to serve our community for the next 4 years. And again, Joe, I'm a very good speaker. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Popoff. Can I have Andrew Casson, please?
Thank you. I tried writing this out, so we'll see how it goes, because it didn't quite fit in 2 minutes before, so my apologies. My name is Andrew Casson, and I'm running for Township of Spallumcheen Council. Thank you for coming. I did want to begin tonight by telling you a bit about my family as it's grown since the last time I was here. My wife, Marissa, and I have 3 kids, Arthur, aged 5, Fiona, aged 2, and Rowan, who's 6 months old. We're Christians and attend the Emmanuel Baptist Church. We both come from big families. I'm the oldest of 8, and my wife is second in a family of 6, which is to say, we're not sure how much bigger our family is going to get, but that's one of the reasons the future is so exciting and a bit scary. I mentioned my family roots because roots are important with celebrating, and our community is such a wonderful place to be planted and grow. When I was first elected 14 years ago, my perspective was a bit different than it is today because I have learned and grown so much over that time. However, the core values through which I view the world remain very much the same. I would describe myself as a bit old-fashioned. I think family, faith, generosity, compassion, integrity, responsibility, collaboration, hard work, caring for your friends, neighbors, and community are fundamental values that are important to encourage and uphold. It's from that mindset that I believe the highest goal local government should be aiming for is to provide a steady, affordable, dependable foundation of services and infrastructure from which the people that live and give here in our community can successfully grow and prosper. Recent substantial increases in the cost of living is a challenge to that group and has highlighted for me even more the importance of continuing to diversify our tax base in order to stabilize and decrease the load on taxpayers. I see that this will take investment into future potential in the township. I see the job of council is working together to ensure that when that potential becomes reality, whether it's investment in infrastructure or services, that it's been facilitated in a way that it has been facilitated in a way that makes investment a net positive contributor to the township and our residents on the path to better affordability and responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. And can we have Christine LeMaire, please?
Determination, focus, dedication, appreciation, excited. These are some of the words that describe the last 4 years. And let's not forget surprise. Surprise, because I'm actually in front of you today wanting to do this for another 4 years. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Madam Moderator, and fellow candidates. My name is Christine LeMaire. Being on council takes dedication and focus. There are a lot of hours spent listening, reading, attending meetings, standing your ground for what you feel is right for your community. It takes a determined group of people to ensure that the vision for the community becomes a reality, as there are many obstacles to overcome. I can't express enough how appreciative I am for our mayor, members of council, and staff. It truly has been a privilege to work with all of them the last 4 years. We often debate and voice different opinions, but there is always a level of respect shown to all. I am proud to say that we are not a council that settles, rather one that fights for our community. Maybe we don't always get it right, but we try. Council has spent 4 years working on secondary housing opportunities for the community, a wastewater recovery plant, updates to our water systems, and now have plans to start an Agrihub that will service the community in a lot of exciting and necessary ways. We stood with the members of our community during the stress of the fire and COVID, and everyone pitched in to help where they could. I believe in what we are doing and am excited about seeing through what I feel are very worthy projects that will benefit our community for a long time to come.
Thank you, Christine. We can now start some questions. If you have a question, you can come up to the mic, please. 1 minute questions. Anything? Here we go.
Somebody ought to do it.
Go ahead.
My name is David Bakker. To everybody, and I have another question, but I'll go with one for now. I'm guessing that we, apart from all the complicated stuff that you're already contending with, are you ready for the pressures of homelessness? It's probably upon us early, and if we're kind of considering that ahead of time, if it's all possible.
We can start.
Structure to everybody.
You want to start this end with Mr. York, please?
Dave, it's a great question. I mean, we're watching, I think, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah. I think we're seeing it, it's rampant, Dave. I hate to put it this way, but as a non-urban community, we've had less pressure. I mean, we see what's happening in Vernon, Kelowna, and everywhere else, and I think communities have to get behind some direction to facilitate better healthcare, better mental health care more than anything else. It seems that addiction and mental health are really big issues in the community. We've managed to dodge a bullet, frankly, simply because we're not that urban, but I guess it's up to people to pick a fight and support their councils and their communities in trying to find places where people can stay and get off the streets if they choose to do so. And hopefully more funding goes into mental health and people get an opportunity to pick a different path. It's their choice. It's a hard one.
Thank you, Mr. York. Mr. Van Tienhoven.
Thank you. Dave, I somewhat echo Todd's sentiments too. We are pretty much a rural farming community. We don't have a city center. We don't have many of the supports that homeless and people with addiction and mental challenges, all of those things. That being said, we have been working hard to work with our farmers to be able to have an option to have another housing unit on their property to age in place so that the second generation can maybe have a crack at continuing on the farm. We do support our neighboring communities with the work they do for the homeless, and that is in our big plan down the road is to get attainable housing. So we're not looking for social housing, but attainable housing so that young families can come and actually work and live in a community and be part of a community. So we are sympathetic to it, but as Todd alluded to, in a predominantly farming community, we have limited ability to look after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Tienhoven. I have Ms. LeMaire.
I don't know how much there is that I can add to that because I echo the same sentiments as the two that spoke before me. And just to say that not all homelessness is mental health or drug related. Sometimes it is the cost of housing and how people afford to live. So I do believe it's important that we look at attainable housing and maintain the second residences that we're hoping for in the community and give people a place where they can actually afford to live and call home and set down roots.
Thank you. Mr. Popoff.
Basically the same as what everybody else said, but with the farming second residences before originally was just for farm help, and they've expanded it to farm help and elderly people would stay on the farm instead of trying to find another place to live. And also, that part being said, they can also rent it out for people who don't have a place to live and then they can still be there. And then we do work with Armstrong, with the Hogging Center, and we don't have an urban center. So anything is open to comment from people who have options or recommendations. So that's what we're here for, is to listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Popoff. Ms. Farris.
I think we need to really use the power of council to be part of the lobbying effort against the provincial and federal governments to put supports in place. We don't have a huge problem, thank heavens. We need to be watching to make sure that that remains the same and that it does to address the situation. But there certainly is a need for health care, for mental health care, for specialized housing for people, because it's not just a place. In some cases, there has to be some very specialized that they're able to use it, and certainly addressing the fentanyl crisis. And each council, regardless of rural or urban, has that ability to try and influence the government, and the voices of many through UBCM can make that a priority if its power is used.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett. Mr. Casson.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's very sad when you go through other communities and see the impacts. It is heart-wrenching. I think, as has been said, there's, we're blessed not to be finding people with these challenges in our community currently, but I think that the ways that we can do right now in preparing is to be open-minded to different ideas for housing that does keep costs down, to be open to development where it's responsible place to place it. I've often thought there should be a way to, potentially have a duplex scenario on a piece of property where you could have, on a rural piece of property, two owners where the cost of the house is a lot cheaper to build. That's something that would potentially shift all of the housing costs down. So right now you have where housing is very, very expensive across the board. But if we can make housing a little bit cheaper at all points, or not cheaper so much, but more available, I think we have a supply issue, really. So if we can make it more available, that would allow that issue to be mitigated for the people that are able to, through whether suppose there are access.
Thank you, Mr. Casson. Mr. Bakker?
Yes, I believe phantom visibility is a big problem, and mental health needs to be addressed. We really need to get after that, and I think through our UBCM meetings, we can do that. We can meet with ministers and actually help them out, and we can look for alternate housing. We can come up with smaller ideas. We can have smaller houses. We can have extra houses on farmlands. It can be done, but it has to be done with responsibility, and that's all we can do. So,
thank you, Mr. Bakker. Do you have another question?
Thank you, guys. I'm glad you asked that question about the housing, and it's a problem, and it's becoming a bigger problem with even middle-class families that just can't afford things. So thank you, Andrew, for addressing the issue about housing. It is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. Probably won't hit our community. I'm pretty new to the community. I'm Kelly Mass, actually, and new since the last election. And what I was thinking is, I heard you, Christine, mention the Agrihub. I don't know what that is, so I'd like a little bit more information about what that encompasses, and also if it has to do with food security, to bring that into it. If it doesn't, maybe the panel would like to address some of the food security issues that are just becoming prevalent all over. It doesn't matter whether we're rural or urban. This is a wave that Canadians are facing. So,
okay, we'll start at that end, Mr. Bakker. There's the two questions, both the Agrihub as well as food security.
Your question with Agrihub, we are trying to do value added for farm industry. So we're trying on the southeast sector, we're having a piece of land, but we're trying to create value added to our farming, which adds to the sustainability for our products and keep them local. That means basically whatever we're producing, we can keep local and we can use it here. And yeah, that's what that one is. What was the second question?
Food security.
Yeah, so the food security is basically the same thing with the Agrihub. We're trying to keep our food local, process it, and use it local so that we're not depending on the coast or Alberta for our food, and that's what we're trying to do with the Agrihub.
Thank you, Mr. Bakker. Mr. Casson?
Yeah, so excellent question. And I mean, the Agrihub, it's a new concept for me, but it's something that's gotten a lot of popularity in recent time. So we're trying to work with the province to build out a property that we purchased a couple of years ago into an Agrihub, which would be a resource for farmers and small businesses trying to start a farm business. Now, you have to kind of pick and choose to start with how you can go, and that's what Okanagan Valley Feeds is, sort of a cornerstone down there and a starting point, exciting starting point. But what we want to do, I think some of the vision is to enable and provide services to farms and local food-related businesses and farming businesses that would allow them to fill gaps that they may have right now in their expertise, or provide services that would be more cost effective as more of a cooperative effort as opposed to each entity individually reproducing that effort, that item, whatever it is. And as far as food security goes, I think it was highlighted again with the highways being blown out last year that we need to be looking at all the food that we produce here, which is tons of food. Spallumcheen produces a fantastic amount of food. I don't have the number on top of my head, but it's definitely more than enough for this whole area. And so we need to be finding ways to also keep that here so that we don't need to depend on outside sources. So yeah, that, the Agrihub is an exciting opportunity to investigate that, and the research going into it has informed a lot of that for us. So.
Thank you, Mr. Casson. Ms. Farris.
And the Agrihub obviously has some great potential, has the ability to add to food security, but we need to really support our small farmers and to preserve the farmland. I look around my own place in the northeast, and I see lots of places that used to be farming that are no longer farming because they've been building, and large developments have taken place because there's houses and garages and buildings, and suddenly what used to be productive is not productive anymore. So there needs to be the encouragement to buy local. There needs to be the support for local businesses. Farmers markets are a really important part of that, but a lot of our market farmers are aging out, and so we need to find a way to get our young farmers into it. And there are some exciting programs about where that can be supported and they can be mentored and helped and some funding provided for them so that production can continue without being stopped and slowed down.
Thank you, Ms. Farris. Mr. Popoff.
Basically, I'd like to repeat what everybody said. We have the Agrihub municipality owns around 80 acres in the southern part of our municipality. And we have a feed mill going on a part of it, which should be started in the spring. There's other options. Before, there used to be all these processors, like milk processors, like milk dairyland. And then there used to be a packing house where Pearls is there, Fruit Union Plaza. They had everything here. What is happening here, we need some generation foreseeable future. So if you want to get a little farm to produce something, they have to have a place where they can get it processed. If you grow it and you can't get rid of it, people here have to ship animals to Alberta to get for abattoirs and everything else. So what we're trying to do in our south sector with the food hub is to get milk type processing, meat processing, cold storage, or whatever else. And then there's a part of the land for young agrarians. There's young groups who can't afford to buy anything here have that opportunity to use some of that land for that. So there's options are basically wide open to whoever wants to get involved. That Agrihub, what Andrew was saying, with all the devastation of the roads closed, before Christmas, the dairies were getting about 800,000 gallons of milk a day, and we have no milk in the shelf, so there's something wrong. So we have to get something happening to grow it here, to be able to process it here. You don't have to tell them ship it somewhere else and then bring it back. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Popoff. Ms. LeMaire.
So the Agrihub certainly became really important during COVID and the floods. And it pointed out, I think, not just to our municipality, but to the regional district, the value of being able to do all of the things that we need to do in our community to feed our citizens and take care of them. It right now has a lot of ideas. The only concrete person that we have there right now is a Penobscot Valley Feed, and we're happy and excited that they're there, and it is very much our starting point. And now we have, as word is getting out into the community, that this is what we want to do, and it's gaining support. And we've had an opportunity at UBCM to present it to the ministries. Ideas are coming forward for people in the community for what they feel is necessary and what they would like to see there. I personally think it's a really exciting idea, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where it goes. And I do think it will touch on food security for this area. And I think it's really exciting.
Thank you, Ms. LeMaire. Mr. Van Tienhoven.
Yeah, so to echo some of the same sentiments, the Agrihub is quite exciting. We are predominantly a large farming community. However, over the last decade or even longer, it seems that the farms had to get bigger and bigger in order to be cost effective. And what we found, we just actually were at UBCM and we toured some small farms. And this Agrihub, it's exciting because the vision is to see an opportunity for young agrarians to come in and have a plot of land and actually farm it and have a product that they can market and have the ability to have storage. And if there's anybody with a small farm that has a few animals, anybody who has that knows how difficult it is to get your animals to market. So we're looking at all these ideas, but we did a big survey asking the farming community what they want to see there. It's not our vision of here's what's going to be there. We've asked the farming community what they need and what they would like to see. And we will have, we just had the draft of that report, and as soon as it's finalized, it will be out on the website and at the township for people to come and see what it's all about. And, you know, I think it's just giving people a chance to get back to farming, and as been alluded to, it's so expensive for anybody to buy any property, let alone for somebody new and young to get into farming. We have that property. We have the ability to supply land to young agrarians and help them get a head start. And we've also talked with some farmers who are aging out, who have smaller farms and would like somebody to come farm it. So pairing our farmers with young agrarians and getting the next generation into farming so that we can keep farming here and keep it number one, because that is, as our logo still says, Armstrong, it's where farming comes, but everybody can prosper in Spallumcheen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tienhoven. Mr. York.
Well, as you can tell, this group is extremely passionate about this project. When we first started on it, of course, we didn't know what direction it was going to take. And we reached out to the farming community to ask, what is it you need? Cold storage, an educational component. The ministry has bought in. The Agricultural Land Commission has bought in. These are not easy bodies to move into a new thought process like this, to move to a cooperative process where you're able to access these facilities and not necessarily have to build it and own it, really is making sense. Minister Popoff has supported us completely on this, as well as some other initiatives. For instance, Cubic Farms, which are in the north part of the valley here, produce a tremendous amount of microgreens in a very, very small footprint. They use very little water, they use very little nutrient. It's fractional compared to what it takes in big land masses. And these kind of opportunities are being championed by this group, and it's been an interesting process getting the ministries and the ALC to be involved, but now that they are, this is going to run, and I'm really proud of this group for putting so much effort into developing this new idea. Let's see how it goes. I'm very, very excited about it.
Thank you, Mr. York. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Sure, please come on.
First of all, I'd like to say how much I admire you guys for stepping up to the plate and actually going and stepping up and trying to become councillors. It's a huge undertaking, and it's not a small job. So I just want to say, anyone who's coming up and putting their hand up for doing stuff for the community, I just want to say how much I admire that. First of all, and then my name is Michaela Cannon, and I'm part of a group here in Armstrong where we call ourselves ASCA, which stands for Armstrong Spallumcheen Climate Action. We've been around for a year now, and we've had a lot of fun and got some stuff done. And so my question to you has to do with what Carolyn was talking earlier about, was climate change. So my question to you is, with regards to climate change, what do you see as the best climate action that Spallumcheen can take in the next 4 years? Thank you.
Shall we start in the middle, maybe? Yeah, sure. Why don't we start with Mr. Popoff?
Thank you for. The climate change, I started going to climate change meetings in 2015. That's when they first started. They had grants from the government. So there was people from the states, California, one of the agricultural ministers, they said, we have to wake up here because we're going to be like California. They say 2050. It was way before then. So there's different objectives that people can do. I guess with water conservation, there is a place on a hall card where they grow lettuce, or like sort of Ferris wheel inside. They use 95% less water, all in water, no soil. And they have 3, each container has about equivalent to 2 or 3 acres of land, and it produces about 6 crops a year. So basically vertical farming, I guess that's the name for it is, but we have to educate people as far as us doing something, and I went to many of those meetings, and they're very interesting and it's very educational, so everybody has to put a foot forward as far as us as a government. We can give them all the footwork to find out where it is. The people have to be a walk. Everybody has to work together to make it work, basically.
Thank you, Mr. Popoff. Why don't we give it to Ms. Farris, please, next to you.
I think that climate change is going to be what really changes lives for everybody. The mere thought of not having water when we turn on a tap, that's what Las Vegas, Nevada 20 years ago started facing. And they've had to deal with that with recycling water. We've had generous aquifers here, but they're not going to last forever. And as we build in new houses and spread new properties and new businesses, we have to take into account where is the water going to come from. Drilling a well sounds great because there's water, but it affects the neighbors. It affects everybody else. So we need to talk about conservation. We need to talk about lifestyle. We need to talk about how we're going to deal with it. And we also need to look at transportation, which contributes to greenhouse gases and all of those other things. That's a whole mind shift in terms of what we can do and how we react. And it comes down to education, commitment, and having people buy in that we are. You only have to look at what Fiona just did to the Maritimes. I used to live there, and those places that I love so dearly are no more. They're flattened, they're out in the ocean. So we don't have that here, but we have other things that are going to affect us here as well. Look at how dry this summer has been. It's been a record, and that's a warning that we need to do something. So I think the council coming up in the next 4 years is going to be faced with a huge challenge, and I want to be part of that.
Thank you, Mrs. Farris. Mr. Casson.
Yeah, thank you for the question. This is definitely one of the things that is coming before a lot. And I think that, recognizing that we need to find innovative ways to deal with this. I think, there's a lot of solutions that come out, but some of them are more effective than others, and we need to be we need to use prudence in choosing how we can apply and what we can apply that's going to have the best effect at the most responsible cost. A couple of things that I do want to address your question about what are we hoping to do in the next 4 years. One thing we've just started is we're going to be doing a greenhouse gas emissions audit, essentially, with support from the province. We're looking at what our greenhouse gas emissions are currently and what we do. And I've asked that be really holistic and look at the entire spectrum, so we have a good baseline and we know where we stand. Some of the things that we've done, I think, that are valuable to point to is we're trying to renaturalize our creeks. That is something where, I think there's an approach in some places which would be like, put concrete in there, protect the creek. We're going to set that versus what we've done with Hill Environmental is to address it and say, hey, we return this to its natural state. We want to make that investment. Some of the other things and one of the things too that's worth noting is in our municipality, we're very rural. I think some of the traditional things that communities look at might not apply right today, but we can look and say, well, how do we not need to have those apply in the future? As well as saying, what can we do reasonably to change hearts and minds of people now? Because I think I don't really agree with the regulatory heavy-handed approach from the top down. I think it's better to try and educate, work with groups that are willing to work with the community and say, how can we get people to understand, we just need to take little steps, responsible steps, and take ownership over our own footprint first and then go from there. So anyway, those are the things that...
Thank you, Mr. Casson. Mr. Bakker.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Casson. I think we need to start in our own backyard and look and see what we can change, how we can do better, because we all can. And on that, the water, we are taking over a lot of water districts right now. So we're getting meters in, so we know then where our water is going, what we're losing. So that's an important part, because water is the importance right now. So that is one of the things I think that we have to look after is our water.
Thank you, Mr. Bakker. I'll move over to Mrs. LeMaire.
I agree that education is key, and educating the people that live in our community about how they use water, where they use water, when they use water is very, very important. And Armstrong has actually taken a good lead in the dry landscaping, and you see a little bit less of that on farms, and it's something that we can certainly encourage. Encouraging people to compost and making sure that they know, that the RDNO offers 50% off of a composter if you want a composter at home, or how to go about it. But I also think that the wastewater recovery project that we have going on in the southeast sector is going to be an important part of that. The water that comes out of there that'll be used to recharge the aquifer, as well as hopefully drip irrigation for some of the farms down there. It is something that begins in your own backyard. And when I think about it, sometimes I think to myself, it's almost overwhelming when you watch the news and you see the things that are happening in the world, as well as in our community. And for me, it drives it home. It drives it home that I don't buy the plastic, or I don't buy the things that are in plastic. I carry my own grocery bags. And while those are all little things, I think they are key to us doing it as a community to make our community and our area a better place to live.
Thank you, Mrs. LeMaire. Mr. Van Tienhoven.
We'll just carry on with the theme of that of our wastewater project. So we are thinking about being greener. We've been thinking about water conservation for the past 4 years, and in this wastewater treatment plant, once it's up and going, the treated water that comes out of there will help irrigate about 600 acres in an area of our community that typically there is no water to irrigate that. So that in turn will help produce another crop along with they generally get one crop these last 2 summers. That's even tough. So having that water go to that and irrigate that, we're looking at as the water districts dissolve to us, the cost to upgrade your water systems and all of that, and just having clean drinking water for our whole community, that is a big project, and that doesn't happen overnight as well. So we're looking at helping our residents have safe, clean drinking water, yet also to encourage and teach a bit of conservation, because Canadians, we are notorious water wasters. So I think if we all do our part and just start irrigating a little more responsibly, landscaping a little more responsibly, and as we've seen, there's new technology in farming. Orchards now are going to drip irrigation. So there's so many different things that will help us conserve our water and protect our aquifers. And we know our aquifers are some of them are at risk, and we have been lobbying many levels of government to help us come up with a collaborative solution to keeping the aquifers clean and helping with clean drinking water. We don't think we need to come in with a heavy hand. We just need to come in with a win-win for everyone involved to make sure that we all have clean drinking water. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Tienhoven. Mr. York.
You guys are good, honestly. Water, and it boggles my mind, and here we're going back to food security, how these two are connected. It boggles my mind that we produce it, we put it in a truck, we send it to Calgary or Vancouver, the truck comes back empty, and then it's shipped here, and the amount of transportation, the fuel, the CO2 that's put in, to me is ludicrous. So this decentralization of processing and moving things into our community, I think, is crucial. As far as water goes, the service areas, we wouldn't believe how much water is being lost that we were unaware of. The systems are old, it's nobody's fault, but we have to realize that if every drop that we waste is a drop we don't have to use. So through aquifer mapping and trying to keep potential issues out of especially vulnerable aquifers, making sure that the pipes are tight, making sure that metering, which is unpopular but necessary, is employed, I think will help preserve something that we already have. Also personal behaviors, everybody touched on it. I mean, how many of us collect our rainwater now to water our gardens? I think it's pretty common. And the more that we talk about it with each other, the more people pick up on those ideas and they realize, hey, I'm not alone, I do that. How hard was it? It wasn't, it was easy. You find tanks everywhere. You store your water, you're proud that you do it, you produce your own vegetables. It's a wonderful process. But as you can tell, it is in the forefront of all of our minds. And sometimes we feel like we're hunting elephant with a pellet gun, but nonetheless, we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. York. Do we have any other questions? If we don't, I do have some that were, okay?
Good evening, candidates. My name is Lori Shepherd, and I live in Spallumcheen. And my question has to do with tourism. We have bluegrass farms, B&B, Armstrong cider, and agritourism on farms, especially our flower farms like Blue and Sparrow, for example. I'm just wondering how council can or how they will support the tourism in the Spallumcheen area.
Mr. York, let me start you.
Oh, okay.
Lori, this proliferation of these small businesses that have chosen to come to Spall, I mean, we've seen so many come out of the Fraser Valley, has made us, where was Spallumcheen? We heard this for years and years, where's Spall? It's putting Spall on the map. We've always been known as Armstrong, of course, because our address is Armstrong. But we encourage these businesses, and it's twofold. I mean, one is tourism puts dollars in our local businesses' pockets, from the gas stations that they drive through to the grocery stores, and everything in between, participating in the farmers markets, etc. That brings people to our community. Secondly, it helps us show off what we have here. I mean, and this council has been very, very progressive in trying to encourage these small businesses to establish themselves here, and we're proud of them. It's great job creation. It's good for us as a community because it helps us be recognized for the efforts that we put into trying to support these things. I mean, they've been successes across the board. The tulip festivals, it's wonderful for our community in every way, shape, and form.
Thank you, Mr. York. Mr. Van Tienhoven.
Everything Todd said, plus we really support farmers finding creative ways to show off what they do and help educate the younger generation. This weekend there was an awesome event out of Fieldstone Grain where they had the old time plowing matches, they had steam tractors, they had horse teams, there was vendors, all the vendors there that are growing and producing their own local product. It was unbelievable. Our farmers market on Saturday, every time I go there, I'm just amazed at the amount of people and the quality of produce that we have. So I think having people come to the farm and actually see where their food is coming from, taste this fresh food, and just see how important it is to everyone, I think we can't do enough. And Spallumcheen has always been very, very appreciative of all the work that the Chamber does in promoting all of our businesses in Armstrong and in Spall. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Van Dien. Miss LeMaire, please.
This is a great question, and I happened to be on council when Troy Siebert came to us with his idea of bluegrass farms, and stood in front of council and explained to us what he wanted to do and how excited the people in the room got, because it was an original idea, it was an exciting idea, and council got behind him. We helped him in every way that we possibly could, and he is very successful and he's doing great things for the community. Armstrong, another perfect example. Council took the tour out there when it was an old building and they were trying to explain their dream, and there they are today, a successful business. They just came and asked for, more footing for their patio, which council was happy to give them. I don't think this council would ever be opposed to a great idea that would be beneficial to the farmers in our community, to the community itself. And every one of these ideas, as they've come forward, I feel has had the full support of council.
Thank you, Ms. LeMaire. Mr. Popoff.
Well, basically what they said, and we're very open to agritourism. We always have been here. That's as people approach us, we are pretty positive on what we accept. So it's nothing really more other than just keep on growing. And like the tulip, it was from atmosphere. They used to draw 100,000 people when they were down there here. So I not as many here, but there was a spin-off. They go there and then they go to Armstrong. It all goes hand in hand. So and there's all these little places all over our municipality. So basically our sign says open for business, so pay for business. You can keep coming.
Thank you, Mr. Popoff. Ms. Farris.
I don't think that anything has changed in 20 years in Spallumcheen. It's always been supportive of tourism. Some of the ideas from councillors previously that came back included the corn maze, which how many of you know about Field of Screams, which is in Spallumcheen. So it's another success, and it's a long time one that's been running as well as the newer ones that are coming in. So I don't see that changing. There are also grants available that can be accessed by the operators for these things, and that can be helped by staff and council as well.
Thank you, Ms. Farris. Mr. Casson.
Yeah, just everything everyone has been saying, and definitely when people come with an exciting idea, or even an idea that needs, to be banged around. Sometimes we'll call it spitball at council and say, hey, well, have you thought about this or thought about that? Or if you classified it this way, maybe we'd be able to go on to this rule instead of that rule. And we're always looking for ways to get to yes for people that have a dream they're trying to build. A couple of things I did want to mention, the township, long before I was on council, was supported by Keith Ranch, and like Carolyn was saying, Field of Screens is there. Glamping is something that we've just recently approved there, and they're starting to get their glamping off the ground, which is an agri-tourism use. Another thing we just put in place is temporary use permits, which it's kind of an opportunity to try something out where it doesn't lock it in. So it doesn't come with necessarily the same challenges to get past the zoning stage. And so I'm hoping it'll allow us to, have more latitude to dream with people in a sense. If they've got an idea they really, really want to try. Permissive tax exemptions, for places like Hulkar Hall and things like that. And grants and aid. And also, the Agrihub. We don't know yet what the spin-off from that will be, but I think it's going to be a huge thing for potential agritourism. So there are lots of exciting things in that space. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Casson. Mr. Bakker.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think tourism is huge. I think you underestimate how big it is. And there's lots of people can do. If there's new ideas, by all means, people come to the coffee with the mayor and toss them around. At least you get an answer there of what can and can't be done, but it can be done way more than what we all think. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bakker. Any other questions? There we go, another one.
Sorry, I have another one. It seems that businesses in the area, so not just in Armstrong, but also in Spallumcheen, are having lots of problems lately with getting enough employees to come back and work in their businesses, on their farms, whatever. And some of the reasons is because there's no place for them to live around here. So it's a City of Armstrong problem, but it's also a Spallumcheen problem. So my question is there anything that you can recommend, anything that works? What is your thoughts towards trying to give affordable housing or something to people in the Spallumcheen area so that they can work in the area?
Do you want to address to that one person, or do you want everybody to answer that question? Let's mix it up.
Let's mix it up. I'm going to ask that question to Joe, Todd, and Mr. Casson.
Mr. Casson, you got a mic? Go ahead.
All right. Well, I think we've touched on this a little bit, but it is a challenge. And I think, to me, in a market economy, supply is one of the main problems. And there are different challenges to building, and those challenges aren't going away. And some of those come from the province, some of those come from the federal level, but on the local level, I think this council has been very consistent at trying to work with people to find ways to bring new housing aboard. Secondary housing is a huge thing, like on farms. That was a big opportunity, and thankfully, I think in large part because of relationship building with the ALC and being able to have those relationships where you can say, look, this is, these are the concerns and we recognize those, but here's the benefits, and we don't always maybe get those stacked up properly in the balance of what it means for people being able to age in place, being able to farm generationally. As far as housing goes, our wastewater plant is going to potentially open up a lot of opportunity for some of the smart growth that we, have no option to do now. And that's because it'll increase the amount of services we have and can offer and the infrastructure that currently this doesn't exist in the township. The smallest lot you can have in the township currently is 2.5 acres. So that makes it very challenging. And so, except for some of our historic areas like Cloud and UD subdivision that were done before those interior health regulations came into place, our housing expansion is really quite limited. That said, expansion of our modular home parks, we're really open to ideas. And this is a challenge. So, I appreciate the question. I know I have a brother trying to get a house right now, and it's not easy. It is not easy at all, and I feel the pain. So I'm grateful that we're having these conversations. I definitely think, though, that not getting in the way is like the first step, and I believe we're trying to find that balance.
Thank you, Mr. Casson. Joe?
Thanks, Lori. As Andrew alluded to, we are limited to where we can put housing. Majority of the land in Spallumcheen is in the ALR, and we are very in step with the Agricultural Land Commission and the Ministry of Ag that we're not going to be trying to develop our agricultural land, our farmland into housing tracts. We've been adamant about that we want to keep our farming, but we need to help this community be able to grow a little bit to help sustain these farmers and help look after infrastructure. So, as Andrew alluded to, once that sewer line is in going down to the south end of Spall, there's that whole hillside there that we've had over my last 3 terms on council. Lots of people want to come in there, but we did not have the infrastructure in place to support that. Once that is in place, and we've made it clear to people who are looking there that we are looking for attainable housing. A lot of our businesses here have a hard time finding people, and it's not just our community, it's everywhere. It's in big cities, it's in small farming communities, it's everywhere. The baby boomers, like myself and a few of these other people, we're the big bulk of the population. There's a big vacuum behind us, so we need to do all we can to help keep some of our local next generations here and help keep the businesses that are here alive and thriving. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. York.
Lori, great question. And if any of the seniors in the room want to unretire and come cut grass for me next year, please do, because nobody applies for the job. I think we've touched on what we're allowed to do. I think this is a lot about attitude. Just as we talk about, water off the roofs and then other people doing it, there's an old saying that charity begins at home. And this attitude now toward building small footprint, we've heard them as mother-in-law suites or small houses, 980 square feet, I think. And even more importantly, suites in homes where people are willing to have a rental property in their homes. It's not increasing the footprint of their house. It's an attitude that has to change. I mean, in our own family, I have a niece that can't afford to rent, so she has now moved in with my folks, and I can't imagine living with your grandparents is the easiest thing in the world. On the other hand, if we don't start looking at ourselves and going, do we have space? Can we help somebody? Maybe it's an attitude change that has to incrementally come, so there's better than affordability, but there's a sharing of an existing space, and we have space that's bigger than what we need in a lot of our cases. We just haven't embraced the fact that we need to share that space, and maybe that's an avenue that we've got to go down as individuals and just have as a bigger conversation. Other than that, you guys covered it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. York. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Hi there, Peter Glenn. I'm a farmer in Spallumcheen. My question's not about farming. I was thinking lots about farming and regenerative farming and climate change, and I was thinking about those, asking you something like that. And you touched a lot on the water, and I thought that was great. But something like in our society right now in Canada, we're trying to deal with truth and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. And I don't know, that's just kind of something I'm thinking about right now, that I wonder how you could incorporate Indigenous values and what those are and what you think is important and how you can integrate that into our local council.
Did you want to ask me this specific?
Yeah, maybe we'll Christine, Gerry, and Carolyn.
Sure. Thank you.
Interesting question, tough question. I think as a council, we work with the Indigenous on almost every big project we have. They are a part of our wastewater project. They are included in a lot of the conversations that we have. On a more personal level, I don't really know how to answer that question. Maybe somebody down the line would be better at it than I am.
Mr. Popoff, good work.
To say we deal with those non-Indian man and Spatsine. I went to a meeting once and one of the council members from Spatsine. It was very interesting. When they do project, they do generation planning, like I mentioned earlier on, not working all. The next day they think of the future. So when they're putting that, I thought that was quite interesting because they have to think of their great-grandchildren and basically on and on. So we have a really good relationship with Chief Lewis of the project there and many other projects. So we're very approachable. And in my business, in the automotive trade, I have a lot of customers and we've got to be friends with them and listen to their avenues of what their concerns are. So that's basically all I can say for that for now. But everybody has to work together, basically.
Thank you, Mr. Popoff.
I think it comes down to respect. We need to be able to walk in other people's shoes and understand. I don't think many of us, with our privileged lives, as I look at the table up here, really understand what residential schools meant for some people. I have friends in the community, both in Spatsine and Celix, that have shared and talked over the years, and certainly in the schools, we've spent a lot of time trying to educate people so that that knowledge starts to percolate and starts to understand the generational trauma. And I think in doing that at council, you have to do it respectfully. You have to do it where people are at and understand some people are in one place and some are in others, and work together to bring those entities together to work. Because if we don't respect Mother Earth and we don't protect it, then it's not going to be there for our 7 generations that we want to protect and have there. So it's important that we do that we listen, and that we try and continue the dialogue. And I think that's been started at council, and it needs to continue with an emphasis as we move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Farris. Any other questions? Please come up.
Warren Smith. I have to first acknowledge Peter and Dave that stole my last two questions, so I'm going to go with my third question. But first, lead off with a comment. I would encourage all of you in regards to the matter of affordable housing. It has already taken place in your community, whether you recognize it or not. You can drive down any road within this municipality, and you will see trailers. You will see RVs. They're not storage. They're not people leaving them there when they're not in use. There are people living in them. And you can go to multiple properties throughout this community and you will see multiple recreational vehicles that people are currently living in. I think it's a far greater problem than what you maybe realize. So I encourage you to take a look at your community as a whole and see actually what is going on in properties. It is affordable housing. It really is. It does benefit the property owners because some of them do receive an income from it, but it also benefits the people that don't have places to go. So that being said, my comment is, with last year's wildfire,
Okay. Anybody else have any questions before we start tonight? Go ahead.
With last year's wildfire, what steps is the Township of Spallumcheen taking to alleviate some of the issues that occurred with issues such as lack of bodies to manage the incident event that was taking place?
Do you want to address anybody certain or?
I'll go with Joe, Gerry, and Andrew.
Mr. Popoff.
Thanks for the question, Warren. Fire season was very interesting. Our community has never faced anything like that before. But I will have to say our staff went above and beyond, even our councilors and our mayor. We were at checkpoints. Our mayor was at the receiving centers due to the confusion of people not knowing if they live in Armstrong or Spallumcheen, because most people in Spallumcheen have either a Vernon, Armstrong, Enderby, or Falkland address, even though they're residents of Spallumcheen. So now when you're faced with an evacuation, and they say, okay, anybody who lives in Spallumcheen needs to go here, and Armstrong needs to go there, and people are showing up at the wrong place. Had the mayor not had the foresight to be in Vernon and have some of us at different places, it would have really been chaos for our residents. Although we did have a lot of good opportunity to help those people. As far as what we do with farming, we are working, our fire department is now working with farms to do a fire plan that if there is a big event, that they know what's there. If there's water, what's available. We're working with forestry, we've got a wildfire mitigation, we've got grants to start looking at that. We're going to be working on mitigation. We've got the Emergency Management BC, we're doing a plan with them. So we are in the stage of doing all these plans, but as anybody knows, when you're dealing with the government, nothing goes as fast as you like. But we have had some really good feedback from the residents that we did have to evacuate, how we handled it, and how we had to think on the fly, and both communities came through with shining color. So kudos to staff in both communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Popoff?
Yeah, and follow up on that there, just like Joel was saying, that was our first kick at the can. Basically, we've had fires here before, but never evacuation. So I was basically all our members of the council that were escorting people to their places, and it's a learning curve now for the next, hopefully it never happens again, but everything's in place to do a lot more than again, with the addresses, everybody says they're from Armstrong, whether they're in Spallumcheen or not, because that's where their address is. So very confusing. And then you get the territorial thing. These guys are hauling cattle, and you can go. You have to get a permit from here. They're not going from over there, so we've got to have 4 permits to go. So they're trying to work on that. So it's again like a learning curve for future. So and everybody worked well together for being green at it. Basically, it's never happened before. So anyway, just like I said, hopefully we'll need it, but we're ready. So it is.
Thank you, Mr. Popoff. Mr. Casson?
Yeah, just add a few notes to what's been said. I mean, it obviously was a catastrophic time and certainly felt otherworldly, especially that one day when the whole sky went black. I don't know. I don't know how you necessarily, when you prepare, because everyone we have emergency planning and you think through some of these concepts, but when it actually comes to an event of that size and nature, it really, you know, in some ways puts the plan out the door, and then you're just dealing with it. So after that point, what our staff, I mean, at the time our staff rose to the challenge and just did an amazing job trying to calmly handle what is a very scary time. But since then, we've had a meeting, a fire preparedness meeting, where we brought in resources for our residents to understand, you know, in the future, if this is to happen, here's our permitting process, here's how we're going to handle access to farms. GIS mapping, we were able to get some amazing mapping put together that showed people exactly where their house was located, and they could know really quickly, hey, am I in the evacuation zone, or I'm just in the warning zone? And comms. That was another big thing where the township very, very consistently put out communications that were available on our website and to the, I believe it was sent to the media as well, so that people, if they needed to know an update, even if the update was there is no update, that was there, so that people knew that they could have a reliable source of information that would update them as to exactly where the township's emergency response was at. So we are definitely building and building from what we learned during that event last year to implement for future events, and preparing, starting those relationships now and having those conversations now, so that you don't have to catch people up at the same time as they're trying to, you know, save their livestock or, you know, pack up their house.
Thank you, Mr. Casson. Any other questions? Mr. Newton, did you have a question?
No, I think just...
You did it? Okay, Laura.
Okay, this one's going to be a fun one, and it's for everybody, okay? Say you received $1 million grant to use for your municipality in any way that you wanted. What would you do with it and why?
We'll start with Mr. Bakker in the back.
All right, I don't even get time to think about it. $1 million, what would I put?
Good question.
I know. Where would I put it? I think. Well, that's a toss-up. Can I split it up?
Sure you can.
I can do what I want with it?
No sports cars, okay?
I would definitely put some towards tourism, because that's still important, and I would put some to see where we can put sustainable housing, because that's another important part. So I think I would probably split it between those two, because they're both important. Housing is not going to go away, and we need to figure out what we're going to do with that. That's for our municipality, I think, an important part. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Casson?
Well, like John, there's a lot of different places to spend $1 million. It sounds like a ton of money, but add a year of inflation to it, and it goes really sadly not far. There's so many projects right now that the township is in the middle of investigating, trying to implement, or trying to adjust from a cost perspective. Water system, right away, I think the water meters would be something that would be an easy place. We did just receive a huge grant, actually, for some work on our water systems, but I mean, there's a lot of work to be done. Agrihub, you know, right now we're looking to other governments and grants and partnerships to make that happen, but you know, money of that nature that could be something that would speed that process along. Infrastructure, we've done asset management planning and some natural asset management planning, and we're going to be, I believe, building on that. I think what the work we're trying to do in Deep Creek, the work we're trying to do in Fortune Creek, ditching and diking, all of those places it'd be easy to spend a lot of money and move those processes along by a number of years. So if you have $1 million, I can talk to you afterwards. I'm happy to put it to good work.
Thank you, Mr. Casson. Mrs. Farris?
I agree with Andrew that $1 million sounds like a lot of money. But if you look at some of the priorities and some of the things that affect day-to-day lives, simply getting to and from town on roads. If you look at some of the roads that are out there, there hasn't been enough repairs and things done that you're dealing with potholes on top of potholes. And with traffic patterns changing and with increasing traffic, that becomes an issue. But I think you have to look at what would have the biggest impact on helping residents right now in their current situation. And that would need to be a discussion. And certainly that you should be able to, if it's a windfall, ask your residents where you want it to go. Not decide just, oh yes, we think this is what it is, but ask. It's a great thing to ask people what they really want and what they do, and you'll never get 100% agreement because A wants something and B wants something, but at least you have included them in the decision making, and that's one of the things that I hear regularly. Council doesn't care about some of us. Council only cares what they're doing.
Thank you, Ms. Farris. Mr. Popoff?
Now, if I got $1 million and I was going to give it to the community, basically we get voted in by the community, so it would be up to the community to give us advice to where we spend it. So, as what Carolyn was saying, somebody might have different ideas, but you have to spend it for everybody in the community, and hopefully everybody will prosper from that $1 million, not just one item at home. And basically, if you gave it to the community, it's not in your hands anymore, so let them decide, basically.
Thank you, Mr. Popoff. Ms. LeMaire?
$1 million. I give it back to the community. I say we have $1 million, bring us your ideas, put in an application, and then I give it to the community, whether that's changing your landscaping because you want to be water safe, whether you want to start a business and you need a helping hand. If I can spend it anywhere that I want to spend it, I want to give it back to the community, to the people that want to do something and maybe have some financial challenges that they can't meet. We have a lot of stuff on the go, and yes, we could spend that money in a lot of places, but I give it back to the community.
Thank you. Joe?
It's interesting you say $1 million. We did get COVID funding, a little over $1 million actually, and it was very well dispersed throughout the entire community, through our nonprofits, through helping businesses get through COVID. But everybody's right, $1 million doesn't really go far enough, but the $1 million we did get, our community, I think we're really able to help out a great majority of our nonprofits and our businesses. One thing I do have to say though is that I feel, personally, my opinion only, that this council has done an excellent job of being proactive in talking to our community. We started Coffee with the Mayor. We've got our business roundtable where businesses can come in and tell us what's working and what's not. One good example of that, the industrial park said we plow the roads too late in the day. So it's a simple matter of changing the time of when the roads get plowed. That was easy. We have a farming roundtable. We have a planning. If you want to do any work on a house or build a house, we have a planning committee that you can come in and throw your ideas around before you have to put in your application and spend the money and go through all the hoops. So I think we are very proactive for our residents. We have many open houses. When we did PV Road, we had a big open house consultation. Everybody got to put their sticker on A, B, or C, whatever they wanted, and we do listen to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. York?
Yeah, that's a great question, Laurie. I tell you where my head is at with this. For years and years, the community service group seemed to do more with $1 than anybody could with 10, and it was because they did things in kind. They volunteered, they put in materials, they put in their efforts, they put in their labors, and for every $1 they got, they could multiply it into many, many more. So this was groups like service groups like the Lions, volunteer groups, Haltar Hall, food programs at school. What they do with $1 to parlay it into 10 is an amazing thing. So for me to try and encourage volunteerism and to try and multiply the value of that money, I would definitely try and steer it toward groups that can take it and run with the ball and do a lot more with it than what we could. It's a shame that we're seeing volunteerism fall off, and it really needs a boost right now. So that's where I would go with it.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Patty, and I know most of you here. I want to touch on something that Joe mentioned a minute ago, and I noticed that we have a couple of the younger generation here tonight, which I think is great. We've been in this community since 1896, and there has been a large number of our family members who have had to leave this community because they cannot find opportunity and jobs here. I have 6 grandchildren who are coming into that same area right now. So what I'd like to do is ask Andrew, Joe, and Todd, simply because I know Andrew has a young family. Joe, you have a daughter that is here, whose husband's working out of town. And Todd, you have family here as well. What is it that you see Spallumcheen offering these younger generations that are sitting here today and the ones that are coming up that can help to keep them in the communities they've grown up in and with the families that live here now?
Mr. York, you got the mic.
Wow, that's hardly a big question, Patty. Thank you. Wow, made me think about my kids and my grandchildren. Fortunately, they live close, and we've managed to keep them close because we work together. I guess that's a double-edged sword. I think as an older today, as an older person, we have to try and assist our kids with their dreams. I said it earlier in my opening 2 minutes. We can't be another body that stands in their way. We have to encourage new ideas. We have to encourage them to step out on their own. We can't stifle their thoughts and their different idea and a different approach. I mean, they grew up in a different time, and I talked to my daughter about things that seem a little foreign to me, but as we get older, we fear change a little bit. But we have to, we as a council, and Armstrong for that matter as a council, have to try find ways to allow these new ideas to blossom, because if we stifle them, we'll never see what the result of that is. So it means being an assister, not a desister. It means helping them, not trying to hinder them. It means trying to be part of a process that supports it, not part of a process that squelches it, whatever that dream, whatever that idea may be. And give them a chance and let them run with it. We'll be proud of them.
Thank you, Mr. York. John?
Thanks for the question, Patty, and you're right. I do have one daughter here and one grandson, but I also have one in Alberta, simply because there isn't the opportunity here for them. So that, I think, is what has driven my passion on council, is that we are looking to how can we get attainable housing and how can we make that work in our community that is predominantly a farming community and lack of viable land. And now that we've got our foot in the door with infrastructure, I think over the next decade we're going to see a lot more opportunity for younger people to actually come here and also support our farming community. So it's not an easy process, it's not an easy question, but it's one that once your kids leave home, you definitely start thinking about it more than when they were home. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I guess Mr. Casson.
Yeah, thanks very much for the question. And actually, you jogged my memory, and one of the reasons I first ran was I came to an open house where there was a land use issue being discussed. I'd never met anyone on council, I didn't know anything about it, but I wanted to come and hear that process, and somebody got up and said, we can't do this development, and the way it works here is you're born here, you grow up with your family here, then you move away for 20 years, make your money, then come back. And I got up after that, hearing that, and I said, well, I don't think that should be the way it has to be. I think we should be able to move here or born here and then grow here and stay here and invest our lives with our families here as well. So, this is, a crucial issue to me. And to me, municipality, government, there's a tendency for governments to take on larger and larger scope, kind of creep beyond the bounds of what they're there to do. And the way I feel is we need to be excellent at what we do, providing the services that we're here to provide that allow people to be successful and to build businesses and to build homes and to do what they need to do responsibly, effectively. We're not talking about willy-nilly, but in an organized fashion. That's what I see government at its core. There's many other things we can do and look for opportunities to do, but at its core, it's providing people a stable foundation on which to build their businesses, grow their families, live their lives. And so that is what we try to do here. I believe, and many of the infrastructure things that we are currently working on will enable, housing. We talk about attainable and affordable housing. I don't even know what that is. It all seems so expensive now. But we need to be facilitating good, stable governance and infrastructure. And from there, I think we're going to find there's opportunities created that we can't even dream of. So yeah, that's how I feel about it. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Andrew. I think we should take our 15-minute break now. So we can get up and stand, we'll come back. It is 8:25, let me come back at 8:40. Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Please? Oh, no, we've got one here. Go ahead.
I'm beating her.
Go ahead.
This question I'd like to ask to Christine, Caroline, and John. There's a lot of small business in Spallumcheen that's not necessarily farm related, not necessarily tourism related. How do you feel about where you think the Spallumcheen Council should be going with economic development and helping those businesses within the community?
Go ahead, John, you're closest.
I think small business need that balance. They're an important part. They're still a business, and they're.
There we go. I think small business is an important part of our community. So we do need to support them, and I don't know which way we can support them, but because we have so much farmland, it's hard to have small businesses on farmland, but I think if it's not farmland, we should support it.
Carolyn?
I'm just trying to make sure that I don't hang myself with the cord. A number of years ago, Spallumcheen undertook to do land use agreements and specified zoning areas for small businesses. Gerry was a big factor in that. At that time, there was no regulations, there was no requirements, and things were just sort of happening and whatnot. So that project put in place some rules, some agreements between both sides as to what would be a good way to go. And I think going back to revisit that and making sure that it maybe needs a bit of updating with the new standards today. But small businesses do provide income for people on their properties. If they're trying to farm, sometimes you have to have a mechanic shop to keep your cow-calf operation running. Other things that people wanted to do in their homes and things. But you need to also, it's like secondary suites and other uses, you need to have some regulations around it to affect how it affects the neighbors.
Thank you. Christine?
I agree with Carolyn. I think today, with everything being as difficult as it is, you do find yourself in a situation where you are maybe going to start a home-based business, and I would encourage people to do it. I do think that following the regulations that are in place for having a home-based business are important, and I think it's important that people follow them. But I do believe that nowadays, with things being as difficult as they are, it is part of our responsibility to encourage people to do what they can to make a livelihood for themselves and for their families. So I would say that I would support it, and if people have ideas or concerns, then I think they should come forward to council and present them, and let's have a conversation about it and see how we can make it better for everyone.
Thank you, Christine. Any other questions? Okay.
Wait, that's going to hit me in the teeth. That's good. Thank you. I got got one hard question and one easy question. I'll start with the easy one, and then go to the back of the line. You guys were talking about earlier about multi-generational lending in homes and opening up our homes for the potential of servicing the housing issue that we have, that's servicing, the need of keeping people in our community. Has council at all discussed or played around with or whatever creative ideas, incentivizing ideas of how to maybe encourage that? I know it's difficult because there's provincial taxation things and federal taxation things that might get in the way with that, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be a tax incentive. But has that been played with at all in City Council about creative ways of maybe encouraging people to open up parts of their homes or their properties for rental?
Do you want to address that to anybody certain or the whole thing?
Whoever thinks they have the answer, it doesn't matter.
Where's the mic?
I do think as council, we fought really hard with the ALC to have the ability to have second residences on the property, to have secondary suites. So I think the opportunity is there if people want to use it. One of the interesting ideas that came forward actually at the regional district at a regional growth meeting that I was at was about having a set of pre-drawn, pre-engineered plans for people who want to have a carriage home, whether it's based on urban bylaws, rural bylaws, municipality bylaws, but to have them at the municipality or wherever you go, so you can go in, purchase them, because a lot of people think, I want to do this, but I don't know what size I'm allowed, what the restrictions are. But if the plans are already preset for that particular area where you want to build, and you can go in, you can either buy them, you can change them, you can do all things that you need to do, but at least you have an idea where to start. I sometimes think people get lost in the confusion and the overwhelmingness of how difficult it is to do something like that. So I do think that that idea is great. I hope to see it come to the municipality and be something that our planning department offers to the people that live in the community. And other than that, I think it's just making people aware, because there was a lot of conflict over it originally. You were allowed, and you weren't allowed, now you're allowed again, and people still ask, what are we allowed? So it is making the community aware of what they can do and encouraging them to do it. And whether it's for family, whether it's for rental, to me, it doesn't really make a difference. But I do think education on that one would be a big one.
Thank you, Christine. Joe?
Just to kind of add to that, we've done what we can with second residence, but I think the bigger issue we need to look at is more provincially. Anecdotally, I know probably a handful of people that had rental properties, and after COVID and with this big housing boom, they've sold their rental properties. The province and the federal government, in their wisdom, they tell people, okay, you don't have to pay rent during COVID, but they forgot about these building owners and homeowners that are paying mortgages on these and now are struggling to pay the mortgages to keep these houses. So I think we need to keep lobbying, and we were just at UBCM, and I did speak with a couple of people there, that we need to get the province to incentivize business and people to build attainable housing, rental housing, and have the rules a little more fair. I think I always relate it to a pendulum. Things go too far this way, and now they're slanted so far for the tenants that the landlords are just going, it's not worth it, we're out. And now we're seeing a big shortage of rental housing. My opinion only.
Thank you, Joe. Anybody else? No? Yes? Go ahead. Andrew wants to speak.
Thanks for the question. And this is something you see in different, communities, that they found ways to live multi-generationally. And I think from a municipal standpoint, there's a limit of what we can do, because everything that we do, it treats everything the same. So bylaws and zoning. That's a one size fits all. And some of these are really unique. Some of these have to be unique in nature, and we have BC Building Code, DLC regulations, interior health regulations for septic water. A lot of things to take into account. That said, I do think that our planning department and also council is very open to ideas, and I think that's a really big thing because it's the collective wisdom that I think has enabled our society to grow and build and learn how to handle the environment better and learn how to handle issues better. This is going to be one of those things as well where we may not have all the answers. We definitely don't have all the answers, but I know in the community, people can come forward with good ideas, and if it works, we're open to it and interested in hearing. At least for sure, I know I am. And this council's been very open to, unique ideas to say, hey, look, if I could do this, my family could succeed that much better, or our life would improve by so much. And that's something I think we should totally be jumping at when it works. And again, doesn't hinder neighbors and that kind of thing, but definitely being the owner of a property, having the loudest voice, and having an opportunity to bring their ideas to the table, I think is absolutely what we're here for.
I have a question here that's very similar to that, and that is Airbnbs are very successful, but of course it doesn't bring up the long-term tenant. The provincial government, is there any plans to go to the provincial government to give the owners of these homes more power and less to the tenant? Because a homeowner doesn't want to necessarily rent a home because again, he may not be able to evict him because it's not paid. Is the council going to go to the government to push more rights for the owners of these buildings, these rentals? Sure, Andrew, you got the mic, go ahead.
Okay, I would say, that is absolutely something that we should be encouraging the council to look at. Because again, and I just want to touch on this again, stability and consistency is key for businesses to do good long-term planning or any planning, and that includes municipality. So in my mind, people knowing that, hey, if I make this investment and in some ways give back to the community through providing a rental, but also, take care of my family and its needs, that I am not going to be, losing my shirt and not being able to provide for my family. So that balance needs to be there. And I think as much as compassion has to be a crucial element to the conversations with the province, we also need to point out that the real life impact of making it so difficult for landlords to work with their tenants, manage changes when they're required, that kind of thing, means that we will have less rental options. And they just evaporate and then they're gone because, again, if you have no stability or confidence that you're going to be able to make that investment and not lose in a big way, I don't know how you force that. So then that creates a whole set of new problems. So anyway, I do think that would be something I would be fully supportive of, challenging the provincial government to say, you have to look at both sides of this issue, and balance that out. Because it's affecting lots of people that would otherwise be able to have access to the rent.
Anybody else want to answer that? Here we go. Gerry?
Just a comment, and when we grow in our south sector, we're going to be having industry, and we need people who are going to work with Patty earlier, where they're going to live. And we're at the UBC, and we met with a small scale housing developments, and they do have grants from the government. So if you're going to have industry, you have to have places for the people to live too. So hand in hand, I guess we'll have to work together, but we're sort of maybe putting the cart before the horse, but you have to plan for the future to basically see if there is industry coming, you still have to have somewhere you're going to have to live. So.
Anybody else? No? Anybody else have any other questions?
As I said before, my name is Gerry Popoff, and I've lived here quite a while. I want to point out that the north end of Spallumcheen touches the temperate weather. The south end touches the Okanagan arid weather. That makes Spallumcheen one beautiful place on earth. So I'm building up to trails. Very enjoyable. The big bicycle tours and things that happen. Are we kind of working? What have I got to say about making the trails better, finishing the rail trails, etc.? About trails for everybody, but I kind of like Carolyn to go first because we kind of chatted about it a little bit, and she'll set the stage for you. Thanks.
I'm a great believer in trails. I was part of the original setting up of the trails plan, master plan for Spallumcheen. And one of the first things is we started to run into is we want to go through because it's difficult sometimes to go around. And so you have to work with Armstrong and we have to start to put our trails coordinated. So one's not here and one's over here and they don't connect. We have a lovely opportunity with the North Rail Trail, which is almost fully funded, at least from Sycamoose down to Stepney Crossing in the latest iterations that I've seen. The Kalamalka Rail Trail, the Kalamalka Lake one is gorgeous and is used essentially, but there's no connection between the two. There's some ribbons of green in Vernon that will bring you some ways through, but you can't get through Armstrong and Spallumcheen. And so there needs to be work done to do those connections and start to make those so that there's a huge opportunity not just to start and finish somewhere on either side of our boundaries, but that we actually have through our boundaries that people can do and they can experience Spallumcheen and Armstrong.
Thank you. Anybody else want to answer?
Which side do you want me to go to?
Whichever side I got to.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. This is something the township has going back a long time been passionate about. I think so from a Parks and Rec perspective, we put together a trails plan as part of the master plan that we did. Even though that's not a function of Parks and Rec at this time, but the goal of that was so that we could work with the city to see, hey, are there connections that we should be looking to obtain, different synergies that we can achieve by doing this planning process together. And then on top of that, the township's also funded its own transportation plan, looking at what the long-term opportunities would be. And one of those opportunities is definitely when development is proposed for places that it can be done effectively, the southeast sector being one. There is an opportunity to potentially collect a good deal of green space and trail connectivity. The trail, the North Trail and the Rail Trail is a very exciting thing. It needs a lot of work, and part of that with all of these is kind of in the details, but making sure that we're supporting our farmers, making sure that we're not compromising on the business of living in Spallumcheen, but at the same time embracing the opportunity that it brings. I agree that trails is a really exciting aspect of where the township is at today, and I think because we're such a long municipality, we're extremely long and fill the entire valley bottom. I guess I just don't even want to limit it to the things I've talked about. There's so many opportunities I don't think we've even explored yet. Thanks for bringing it up. It is something that we are working actively on, and I'm excited to see what we can do because there are definitely a lot of passionate trail users around here and elsewhere. It's a good way to bring people into town.
Just to build on that a little bit, I think it's very important that we stay in touch with the Ministry of Highways, because that's an important part of it. They have to do their part. We have to start to realize that highways are not just highways anymore. They need bike paths beside it. That's a huge part, and I think we just have to keep our highway department on that.
Anybody else?
what this is going to be. John and I down at the end have taken turns as our mayor has dug in deeply into the governance committee. Unfortunately, there are areas, particularly of the connection to Armstrong from Stepney, that have become extremely complicated. One of the complications being that agricultural users, the farmers, have been there with agreements that were sound and comfortable, and there have been wording changes that have frightened them in that they have no guarantees that they're able to cross the rail trail into the properties that they farmed, in some cases for generations. The reasons for this are being ironed out. We do have support of the ALC on this, and we're getting toward the end of it. Part of it was due to the fact that the technical committee didn't entirely agree with the language, but we're fixing that. There isn't anybody that doesn't agree that this is a gem in the making, and we will find a way. The service corridor that may be created through the extension of water down to the south sector and services could be an ideal place to make that connectivity. Of course, Armstrong and Squall are going to work together on this. It would benefit Armstrong immensely, and as a lifestyle choice, very, very low chance that we're going to have big, wide shoulders on our roads because we don't own enough of the right-of-ways to be able to do it. This is the way to do it. We just have to dig our feet in, make sure that the agreements with the agricultural users are protected, and work together with the city and come up with creative ideas on how to get from point A to point B. We will get there. Unfortunately, and I think Joe will support me on it, it is painfully slow. It's like pulling teeth. But I think we're all becoming frustrated with it, hoping that there's a solution. Thank you, sorry.
Just one other comment to add to that. The reason the rail trail is gone good till Stepney, the rail trail has to cross the highway. And ever since I've been on the fire department, I've been advocating for a safer way for the McLeod subdivision to access the highway to get to work, get to town. We've lobbied for alternate access. We've lobbied for light. We've lobbied. Very painful. But the big sticking point is how do we get the rail trail across the highway? So that is going to be a big hurdle to overcome. And we are very supportive of our trail society. And we also have many other trails that we're supporting. So join the club. It's frustrating on how slow some things work. There's an old saying, dealing with the municipality or the city is slow. And if you got to deal with the province, it's really slow. And if you got to deal with the feds, it's glacial. So feel our pain. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'm now going to close the questions from the floor. I do have a couple that are on the internet that no one's addressed. One is from the Armstrong Spallumcheen Climate Action Group. If you are elected, actually, before I ask the question, this will go to Christine, Gerry, and let's go with Carolyn. This first question, then I have another question for the rest of you. Okay, this question. If you're selected, what are your plans for the Armstrong Spallumcheen landfill that is beyond capacity now? We have heard it will become transfer station with garbage shipped to Vernon. Clearly, that is not an environmental solution. What do you propose? Where is the mic? Can I give it to Christine?
Yeah, so first and foremost, of course, would be recycling and managing our recycling well. That landfill, though, is owned by the RDNO, and while we get asked for our input and we get to have conversation and we get to put our input in, ultimately, I don't know how much control we'll have over that end decision. I can't necessarily say. We've seen some things come forward, but I don't know if we have any more knowledge about what the end result is than the community has, other than what the information is out there. Pass it on to Gerry.
That sort of a solid subject. When I came here in 1887, Bob Graham was the administrator at the Municipal Hall. That landfill was supposed to be closed within 2 years. That was the time limit. 2 years went on. Many meetings later, still there, and they kept buying property beside another property. And they bought the piece down below. They were going to use it for a compost site. Well, one meeting, the hall was full. This was many years back. There's an aquifer underneath that, and that's where Armstrong gets to the well water behind the firewall. So they had this sophisticated scientist, and they brought this scientist there to comment on this item here. And the first words he said, "Why is there a dump here?" And that was the last of that. So that composting never came. So I was in the auto wrecking business for years. And environmental stuff, totally insane. I had to deal with over the years. And to get rid of things like recycling, and it was almost impossible. You go to the store and pay $1 for a junk for recycling, and what do they do with it? What do they do with the money? They're supposed to, up higher up levels, they're supposed to get rid of it. So this landfill, which is going around in a big circle to give you what the item is, but basically it'll be a collection station. Vancouver garbage goes to cash free. So I don't know whether the one in Vernon's an ideal place or not, but this one, like I said, should have been closed 30 years ago, according to theory. So that's opinion only on that one. But if you want to ask more questions, I'll give you a big history of what's going on.
Thank you, Carolyn.
I think landfills have become an issue that's a hot button because people don't want to live next to them. They don't want to have them, but somewhere our garbage has to go. And I think it's time that we started long-term planning, and that involves pushing the RDNO because they are the waste people that have the authority to do that, to look at different options. There's around the world a whole bunch of different ways that our garbage is treated, not put into landfills. There's gasification, there's composting, separating, there's all kinds of those. If you look at some of the things out of Edmonton, some of the other places, we need to get the staff to put their heads together, and with direction and pushing, RDNO needs to find a better way than just building a bigger landfill or moving it somewhere. And I think that's what we have to push for if we're on council.
Thank you, Carolyn. This question is for John, Andrew, Joe, and Todd. This is from Gerry Popoff, and he says that my 2022 single-dwelling residential property taxes increased by $482.47 for a total of $2,340.49 after the homeowner's grant was applied and water tolls subtracted, an increase of 25.96%. In my household budget, adjustments had to be made to accommodate the 26% increase. What areas of the Spallumcheen budget would you reduce spending to keep residential property taxes affordable, eliminate exponential increases? John, we'll go first. Andrew? Okay, go ahead.
This is I think a question that we probably all had when we opened our mail in January this year is what's going to happen with my taxes? Taxes are complicated. I'm going to say that right off the top, but when it comes to budget things, the way a municipality works is we set our budget based on what we need to run the municipality, and then we collect those taxes. So the amount that we collect doesn't increase in proportion to the amount our assessment changes. Now, if your assessment changes dramatically from your neighbors, then your taxes could change in some portion. It won't necessarily be exactly, but again, it could change to a greater extent. The key things that I think we need to be doing is balancing out our taxpayers and our tax base. Because right now, when there's a major shift in assessment or something moves between classes, the pain of that is felt with dramatic tax increases like you see with Mr. Paul. And that is in part because the way we collect taxes is very heavily weighted into residential. Business, industrial, commercial, those tax rates are far more favorable to to the township as far as the amount of money that we can collect for the footprint that they cover. So anyway, all of that to say, I feel strongly that we need to be diversifying and increasing our industrial land base in order that when there are shifts in assessment, the amount needed to be collected from residential is much less. So the hope is that through investment into the future, my hope is that with investment into the future, the township can start to actually reduce the cost of taxes per $1,000 assessment because of the smart new growth that we've been able to encourage. It's a little bit complicated. If anyone wants to talk to me afterwards, happy to. I've got all kinds of things. But yeah, it's a big one.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, Joe.
Taxes is always a big issue, and as it's been alluded to, there has been some wild swings. We've seen some wild swings in property values as well, and assessed values. The township, due to the wide swing in some people's taxes, we've decided to get a third-party consultant in and review how we set our tax rates. So that will be something that people can look forward to, is that we're going to have a third party look into it and see if we're doing something wrong or if it's just the way it is. We have a very limited population, and a majority of our residents are farmers, and as we know, the province reduced the amount of tax that the municipality can get from the farmers, and that has hit us hard. So we didn't get here overnight, and we won't get out of it overnight, but we will have a third-party review of how we do things and see if there's something that can be done better.
Thank you, Joe. Todd, did you want to address that?
Yeah, I'll be really quick. When we brought in our current administrator, we were educated on a thing called asset management. Educated to a point where it has become our mantra. One of two things has to happen. We cast a larger net, we create more income for the municipality, and that choice has been through industrial growth, i.e. the Agrihub and agro-industry, or we lessen services. And with that question, we're going to have to reach out and ask people, are you willing to have your road redone every 15 years versus every 10 years? Are you willing to have snow removal be later and lesser? Are you willing to have your services limited in some way? You've got to balance them up, money in and money out. Municipalities are not allowed to spend more money than they take in. We set our budget, as Andrew said, and we stay within those lines. I think we refer to them as speedometers. So we're seeing where we're effective with certain levels of service. We see where we're ineffective with certain levels of service. And I think we really just have to reach out and go, what are you willing to accept? Are you willing to accept some growth in certain areas that helps lighten your load? More hands, lighter load? Or are you willing to see less of a service? Ultimately, Mr. Paul, I feel your pain. My neighbor sold his place for a lot of money and my taxes went up immensely. I personally am not willing to see lesser service. I don't think you deserve that. I think we have to be more creative and bring in a greater income into the municipality. Watch what we're doing to residential tax rates and try and grow the income as opposed to limit the expenditures. It's all we get is roads. We get roads, we get road service. That's what we supply. We've got 220 kilometers of roads. It's the one thing that we do, and it's the one thing we do well, and I'd hate to see us make those choices.
Thank you, Todd. Okay, we'll have our closing statements now. There'll be 2 minutes, and we'll start from reverse order of the speeches earlier. So, Christine, LeMaire, you're first.
Make this short and sweet. Thank you all for coming out tonight. It shows your interest and concern for the community. Decisions are being made and the voices in the seats matter. I hope you give me the opportunity to continue being one of those voices. Please come out, encourage your family, friends, neighbors to vote October 15th. Hope to see you all there.
Thank you, Christine. Andrew?
Well, in closing this evening, I want to take a moment to look back and thank everybody for choosing me to serve as a member of your council in the Township of Spallumcheen for the last 14 years. I never cease to feel humbled and honored by your support. I'm grateful for all the members of the council as well as to the members of Spallumcheen staff I've gotten to work with over that time. I want to thank Carolyn for being such a hard-working volunteer and example in our community. As the liaison to O'Keefe Ranch, I've observed her efforts in action there for many years. The past 4 years have been very unique, both in the challenges we faced and the opportunities that presented themselves or that were created. There were some hard times, and I just want to say a special thank you to each member of this current council. I feel very blessed to have been able to work and serve with you all. Municipal politicians are the most accessible level of government. Your opportunity to call someone on council and not only have your voice heard, but potentially have a real impact on how that person approaches an issue is tangible. Your municipality provides more of the day-to-day services that you use, praise, and or raise concerns about than any other level of government. Hearing from you is important both through forums like this one and by voting, but also throughout the term between elections. I appreciate all your input and thank you in advance for your calls and emails. I want to thank Lorette for doing a wonderful job moderating tonight, and Bev for making sure you can see and hear us. Margaret for keeping us honest with time, and Mike with Rhythm Productions for whatever work he's doing up there. It looks serious. A huge thank you to the Armstrong Spallumcheen Chamber of Commerce for hosting all the candidates, forums, and for all of you that you do in the city and the township. It's really an awesome job. Thank you. And finally, I want to say a huge thanks to all of you for coming, both supporting and challenging your future councillors for the township. I hope I have earned your vote on October 15th. Thank you for coming. Please have a safe travel home.
Thank you, Andrew. We hear from Gerry Popoff, please.
Didn't really make a final statement, was going to wing it, I guess. So I thank everybody for coming and thanks all the people who put this together. And I basically, when I'm on council, I have a good team and we work all together. And as far as myself, I never had no major agendas that I want to work on. Everything that's involved in our community, and I get a lot of phone calls every day from people who have concerns. They know who I am, they trust the person, and then they feel comfortable talking to me. So if I don't know the answer, I will find out. And I always call back. So anybody wants any answers or anything, we'll try our best. And as far as anything else, I guess we'll just have to find out, come out and vote on the 15th, and then the 5th is a pre-advanced, and the 12th, and then the 15th is the final date. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Gerry. Joe?
I too would like to say thank you to everybody that's come out. There's been a lot of really great questions. It's very difficult being here under the lights and having to do this, but it is addictive. I think once you get onto council and you know, especially working with such a great group of councillors this term, under the leadership of the awesome mayor, we've managed to accomplish a lot, and a lot of us would like to see some of the things that we've got in the pipeline, we'd like to see them kicked over the finish line. So that's why I'd like to ask for your support to be on for another term, because I think we've got a lot of great things in the pipe. I'd like to see that through, but none of this would be possible without the awesome team that we have behind us, our CAO and all of our staff. We have, I feel, the best staff bar none, maybe a biased opinion, but we have very great, capable staff at the township, and everybody is looking out for our residents' best interest. I'd like to thank the chamber, Patty and her team. Awesome job for our community. The amount of money that Patty's brought in grants, and the amount of support that we've been able to give our businesses, our nonprofits, and our residents. Phenomenal job there too. So, and thank you to Lorette and Marguerite, and thank you to everybody to take your evening and come and listen to a bunch of politicians.
Thank you, Joe. Can we hear from Carolyn, please?
Thank you all for your interest and your attention. I would challenge you to ensure that your family, friends, and neighbors vote in the upcoming election. As my parents and grandparents said, you get what you choose. And if you don't vote, you have no right to complain. Let's change the dismal statistic of low turnout and show that as residents we care about our community and have a huge turnout for the vote this time. If elected, I will work hard for the residents to ensure that they are heard and that transparency and accountability are the guiding principles for council. Increasing taxes is not a way to allow residents to continue to enjoy our great area, so we need to ensure fiscal responsibility and reasonable reserves to meet changing and unexpected needs. Long-term planning needs to look at the changing demographics as the baby boomer bulge shrinks, and we're going to be facing a whole lot of changes that fall out from that. Thank you to the chamber members and all the volunteers for putting on this meeting, and I wish you all safe travels home.
Thank you, Carolyn. John?
I'd like to thank you all for coming out and the great questions. They're hard to answer sometimes, but thanks for them. It's been a great 4 years, and I feel we've got a lot accomplished. We had a great team as councillors and mayor. I think mine is the first time, but I think we've had the greatest mayor ever. But and our staff is awesome. They have our backs always. We ask for something, we get it done, and that's important. So I would really love to do it for another 4 years. So we got a lot of things that we need to finish, and I'd like to see come to an end. And I'd love to be here for another 4 years. So I'm up for election. Vote for me. Thank you. And last but not least, I would like to thank my wife, because without her, I wouldn't be here. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And Todd, our last speaker.
And people wonder why we have 9-hour council meetings. We talk, we think about it, we weigh it out, we listen to people, we banter it back and forth, we disagree, we come to conclusions. At every turn, it's to try and achieve something that will give us pride in what we've done. I'm very proud of the time that I've put in here, and we're rolling right now. We've got some great projects in the works. I want to see it completed. Christine, great mayor. To everybody, I've loved this last 4 years with you guys. I'm willing to see these things finished. I would love to go one more turn. Shout out to our staff. Everybody has said it. We can't say it enough. Administration, our support staff, our planning, and our public works guys who work their butts off for us and make us all look so good. It's been a pleasure, and I'd like to see it continue, and I'd like to see us continue to be as aggressive and get as much done in this next term as we have in the last one. So thank you all for coming out. Very much appreciated. Thank you to the CFC, and thank you so much. Appreciate you all coming out. And to echo Carolyn, be safe driving home, okay?
Thank you, candidates. Just want to let everybody know that this is being recorded, and you can see it on the Armstrong Spallumcheen Chamber of Commerce Facebook page as well as the website. So if you want to tell your friends and family that haven't made it up here to take a look. I'd also like to thank Bev Peacock for doing our sound and lighting, Mike for our recording, and Marguerite for our timekeeper. Do you want to say something? Okay, sure. Our Spallumcheen mayor would like to say something. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know me, I am your mayor. So I am Mayor Christine Fraser. It will be my 5th term on council and my 2nd as mayor. And thank you very much for coming out tonight. I just want to say this group of people up here, over the last 4 years, we have had more open houses, more community events, even with COVID. As soon as COVID was over, we had a huge community event where people came out and actually got to feel a part of the community. It was the first time almost ever that it had ever been done. And we've just built on that over and over. And every time residents come out, I think they get more and more opportunity to be heard. And our group here, and I'm sure Caroline as well, would do a good job. The biggest thing is we listen to our community. And I think that there's no better way to do things. No one has an agenda here. No one has a specific, where I'm trying to get this project done or that project done. They're all just really here for the community, and they really genuinely care about the community. So thank you once again for coming out, and thank you to our current council. I couldn't have asked to work with a better group of people. And thank you to Patty and the chamber and everybody for here tonight. And we do have coffee with the mayor. It's the first Wednesday of every month. So you can come and ask any question and put me in the hot seat since I didn't get to be here today. So thank you very much for coming out.
Please get people to vote. It's a privilege to vote when we take a stand. We forget about it. Let's get people out and vote, please. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening.